Right, we're live. We didn't need all 6 minutes of that, but it's pretty fun. Welcome back. Oh,
Yeah,
Xirtus,
was a good
there you
time
go.
to key up on that, man.
AI butts. Anyways, the scientific world is going. The whole archaeology, and I'm sure like the academic and the Flint Dibbles of the world are just pulling their hair out right now with all the attention that this is getting from on the internet from these scientists who've done these radar scans and satellite scans and whatnot, and have been collecting evidence for structures or voids or some kind beneath the Giza plateau, potentially something much older than the pyramids, that the pyramids were built on top of, either to cover over or cover like an ancient
just
site.
part of a larger functioning system, right? Lots of people having theses that the pyramids themselves are not tombs but have some sort of functionality, and if there are like massive structures or other parts below, could be like the engineering rooms, the like the plumbing, the inner workings of what it is potentially. But it's that there's been several different groups, whether they're finding new cavities within the pyramids themselves, and then this SAR scan, and then it brings up also the past work of Carmen Bolter, rest in peace, but she was a Egyptologist out of the University of Calgary, where I live, coincidentally. But she was responsible for the Pyramid Code on Netflix there several years back. And after the Pyramid Code, she networked with Klaus Donna, very famous Austrian researcher into OOPArts, out of place artifacts, and that he has this network, I believe they're out of Switzerland or maybe Austria, somewhere in Europe, that have a different type of satellite scan. That they were the ones that were able to do the Bosnian pyramids and found all of the inner pathways and caves within Bosnian pyramid, which then led Sam to be able to find them and dig them out, sort of thing. And that from there, Carmen Bolter got the same group to scan a different area of the Giza Plateau where they supposedly found the lost labyrinth of Egypt, which is this massive megalithic, supposedly two-story underground epic chamber that I believe even Herodotus talks about, or something like that.
You hearing that weird noise?
That might be me. I don't have my mic muted.
Talk again, Bernie, for a second.
All right. So no,
yeah, it's not you, Jeremy. It's Bernie. Check your settings. Yeah, check your settings really quickly in audio. See if you've got what you have, echo cancellation or mic reduction on.
They always give us echo problems no matter what. I pay like $100-something a year for this professional service and everything.
But you have to pay like for the echo cancellation service too. Otherwise, no, I'm just kidding. That'd be hilarious.
Yeah, I don't know. This is crazy though. I didn't know about this labyrinth. There was a labyrinth in front of the pyramid that's covered over.
Yeah. Well, you heard about the water thing, right? Did you see the whole thing with
that they floated the stones up from the Nile?
And the Nile was diverted to Giza. Yeah, exactly.
The capstone. What is it? The stone that these pyramids are built out of is the sandstone of the Giza plateau. It's literally carved right out of like the quarry. It's built on top of like a quarry.
Does it sound better now?
It does sound better. Yeah, I think so. But I think some of the pyramid rocks do come from like thousands of miles away, right?
Right. Yeah, the casing stones and the top stone and all apparently came from like.
What I bring up with like all the research
miles,
I've done into the like megalithics and what is the polygonal megalithic structures, it seems that a lot of it is geopolymer. And Bob Greenier with the wind hex machine, that it breaks down the rock at like the ionic level into dust or whatever, that's the essentially just with swirling wind that it's a potential of how the ancients were able to move all of these thousands of tons, millions of tons worth of material. It's like it was as dust, in bags, like a more advanced concrete, just something that's a lot similar. Like you're not needing harmonic levitation or like wild alien lasers. It's like the most reasonable explanation could be that they just figured a way to grind down the stone into this dust, and then a way the geopolymer works is it's a chemical bond as opposed to the cement we have today, which is weaker compared to Roman cement, which was also a geopolymer, which was that chemical bond reforming and crystallizing.
But you've seen can you pull up my screen share for a second?
Well,
you've seen this video here where they build like the Suez or the Panama Canal style thing. That's if you just that one really quickly shows. Yeah, there you go. That was it. Where like basically this is a short clip, but they have
I've seen
stacks of papyrus.
Let it all out. You build like coffer dams and flood everything in. And
there's a flood right there. They float the stones. They don't have to have them above the water. They just have to be buoyant enough. Which it's apparently, I think it's like 16 of these stomach sacks that they'd have to use. They did some math on these for the heaviest stones, which is not as heavy. I mean, most of these stones are not nearly as heavy as the heaviest stones, right? There's like maybe four major heavy stones. A lot of them are still pretty large, but it's completely convenient to float them. And they've done a lot of. This guy's got a channel called Pyramids Really
Built. Economics of such a construction project, and having run like big construction projects myself, just trying to envision how they did this multi-generational.
I mean, this is cool because they can reuse the sacks, right? So you got the sacks on the water, it floats
again,
across.
but think of sacks. If you're using it as like a geopolymer cement, all you're doing is filling sacks and letting it dry, and then that's why it's like paper thin. They probably use like a paper or something in there, and then that's also how you got each polygonal block, which is made them essentially earthquake proof because it absorbs the force as it comes in, because every block is slightly different. So it's like they're not having to like chisel each individual rock, measuring it into the rest. It's like if you work construction, which I've now been doing for the last 3 months, and watching all the concrete pour, it's like you just see how they make the forms, pour it in, and a day later it's solidified. And now looking at a lot of the other ancient megalithic sites, I'm seeing what appears to be like where wood was, where these forms were and stuff.
Part, I don't understand how the water stays inside of this chamber as it goes up the pyramid.
So it only goes for like sections of the chamber. Right?
So it's like locks. Like
it's locked up like each floor, so they're not showing it properly right there. Like you need to
because all that water would just flow out.
And you'd have extreme pressure. So see, you've got this is the size of the chambers.
Yeah,
the water comes in and it comes out and it comes in again, which explains a lot about river flooding, because taking the water from the Nile and then causing this desertification, we always wonder, like, why is it a desert where it used to be a tropical paradise in Egypt? What if the pyramids are literally the reason that most of this area has environmental disaster, right?
So to build these coffer dams out of stone and build them watertight, there's got to be evidence of like pitch or tar, being used to plug, the leaks, because I don't know what else they had in those times to really like plug the small gaps or leaks in that kind of.
You also could have interlocking pieces. You just have waxed boards that fit in between where the same way that the boats work. You have interlocking boards that keep water from going in between the gaps. And you just push pressure. You basically create pressure chambers where the water pressure is higher.
The idea behind this theory is to reduce the amount of labor of the actual construction project.
Yeah, because you're able to free float the rock. So you shouldn't have that much weight.
For all the coffer dams, you have to build these extreme precision cuts. I mean, that's still a good deal of.
And where's the evidence of those dams?
Good deal of work and stuff. So
there are now. That's the thing. Ever since this theory that we've been pushing, the idea of being possible in the last few years, I think it's the last 2 years, they found LiDAR proof of diversion of the Nile towards Giza, and that there was literally a cutoff to the Nile where it
I
dams
didn't
out.
go there. No, that's been on my bucket list for years. I've always wanted to go to Egypt and see the damn pyramids.
We are doing it either this year or next. Probably next year because it's still a little bit
Give me a
turbulent
couple
there.
years, man. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Eventually. But I'm
Mars
trying-
Danger has to be old enough to go into the pyramids with you, right?
Yeah, I want all the kids to go. That would be great. And
Here's the long lost river in Egypt, possibly solving the ancient pyramid mystery, right? So there's been a number of stories that have come out. The 40-mile long river branch, which ran by the iconic Giza pyramid complex, among the others, was hidden under the desert. This is completely off topic, but you ever think about how like Jews don't really use vowels, and Giza and Gaza would be written the same way? Doesn't matter. But the existence of the river would explain that 31 pyramids were built in a chain along the now inhospitable desert strip between the Nile Valley between 4,700 and 3,700 years ago. See that like that 1,000-year thing kind of is interesting because you wouldn't expect it to be like that difficult to figure out when these pyramids were, but we're basically using historical records. People didn't talk about pyramids. All of a sudden they're talking about pyramids. There's nothing in the Bible about pyramids, right? For instance.
then again, you know, if you've ever made geopolymers, right? So about geopolymer, dude, mixing up the water glass and ash, man, it takes a lot of, you have to like really stir it, like just to make a small amount. It took a considerable amount of labor for me to just,
and it's still pretty easy for people to tell. I mean, the crystallization process doesn't make the stone not obviously geopolymer. So it seems like it's pretty clear that these are cut stones, but I'm not saying it's impossible. Over a period of time, the whole point of the geopolymer is that it becomes a stone solid because of the crystal that's growing in between.
And I'd postulate it's probably a combination of like all of the above sort of thing. And
right, because there's two kinds of stones at least.
Yeah,
the
like
casing
the
stones and
sandstone was probably the ones that were like that. And then like the basalt more likely probably wasn't geopolymer, right? Like those were massive. Like
how did
they found them in quarries, right, where they had stopped cutting them, sort of thing.
Well, yeah, so it's about 1,000 kilometers away, right?
I mean, I mix a concrete. If I mix concrete, I use a concrete tub and a hoe, right, or like a shovel. That's like the easiest way. You tip it on an angle, you pour. You know, I wonder if there was another. I wonder how they made concrete back in the day. And you know, all we have is Vesuvius ash from one of
I think it could be a natural accident that's discovered. Right? So like Phoenicians and Greeks, they had great in Mediterranean. They had great accidental concrete because you were in the process of smashing stones and using water to wash away things. Something was created often with a mixture of shale, clay sediment, the water that's from the river, and seashells, right? Seashells even being broken up. And this created natural geopolymers that I'm sure that sailors started to recognize and they started to make on purpose.
They obviously, there's concretions occur naturally all over the place. There's all kinds of stones that occur on the beach, you know, or in other locations, which are, you know, basically, you know, they when they recovered all these cannons and stuff off the bottom of the ocean, all these artifacts and old guns and stuff that are pulled up from the ocean after like 300 years, they're all covered in concrete, like a naturally forming concrete that just naturally occurs in the salt water with certain elements. So I'm sure they studied this, you know, because it seems to me like there's a lot more to the science of, you know, how rocks are formed and how to make artificial rocks than we.
And we seem to find geopolymers around pyramids generally, right? Like Bosnian pyramid has crazy ceramic geopolymers that are, you know, the entire thing is coated with at one point. So it doesn't seem too unlikely that this is something that happens. I think Fukushima, that was another one I wanted to bring up earlier, is the Fukushima pyramid with the UFO sightings.
Isn't there a effort underway to actually, so they're actually digging into this pyramid now and uncovering it, right?
The Bosnian pyramids, and there's actually 3 of them together.
They're trying really hard, but the government keeps actually making it harder for them because it's a UNESCO heritage site already for something that happened way more recently. There's like Bosnian kings that like decided to settle on top of the pyramid at some point, like halfway up it. So they're like, well, you have to be careful not to disturb the Bosnian kings UNESCO site.
Yeah.
So they have to go like dig around underneath from another side to get into that part of the. But yeah, they're doing incredibly good, which is great because like they're into conservation.
Imagine if that's the only entrance into the site, and that's where they built the camp on purpose.
Well, that's the other thing.
This is the front of the main pyramid.
Yeah.
That's the back of it.
Oh,
and this is the scan that I was talking about.
Oh, it's a heart shape.
That Klaus Donna's team did, and that right, but
this
it's like
amazing.
each colored like path, red, white.
And you know what?
Where,
the Shermers and the Mick Wests of the world hate this kind of stuff because they like to think that they know history and we have facts and really understand our history and we can trust academics and the mainstream narrative of things. True. And this stuff just flips that whole narrative on its head. If we have like ancient structures under the pyramids, that would change everything. And you know, again, we have to look forward to actual excavation or
right. So my understanding here, this scan was done by like this new type of technology, and it's like there's hundreds of meters of differences between all of them, and the blue ones represent these water channels, and that Samir was able from these scans to know where to dig into the pyramid, and then these are some of the pyramid actual aquifers that they dug into.
And how big are these?
Like 400 kilometers straight, or like 400 meters on either side directly in, and they go straight across. This is the other thing, is we haven't dug them all out yet because there's a number. There's like they connect not just across the pyramids, but from one pyramid to another pyramid. Like all of the pyramids are connected, and they're filled with. You can see the inside of this stuff. It looks like river stones and things, like that have filled up the inside, which is crazy because it's pretty particular. Actually, so you the thing with the okay, so like Sengun Mori was wanted to also pull up. Let me when you get a second, I'm gonna no, I haven't even screen presented yet. Don't worry, you got time. Here, okay, I got it. So if you go to Japan in Fukushima in the 60s and in the 80s and
right, you said there's UFO sightings around these pyramids.
Totally. And there, so here, pull up my screen for a second there.
Sorry, I'm trying, but I got them.
It's all right. Take your time. I just think it's kind of interesting here. This is this rural Japanese town is a UFO hotspot. Look at the shape of this mountain that's in the middle of Japan. How much higher it is.
Look at how at the base of it there appears to be what looks like terraces too, right? Like
a spiraling thing. Let me go to a further picture here. This is the thing that they have all these pictures of things like this from the 70s of Bell UFOs, and there are tons of stories here, which is ironically, Fukushima. Like in 2010, we know it for the nuclear meltdown. So it makes a kind of weird sense that there would have been UFO sightings here, before that. I feel like anything that happens with nuclear is like a Ninja Turtles space-time movie. It's always going to be sci-fi.
Right, and like that's
but here, like, look, doesn't it remind you of the Bosnian pyramid?
Confirmed by whistleblowers, right? Like even like John Brandenburg being like, "Man, I've heard so many stories. Everything's related to the nukes and nuclear technology."
Japanese
and UFOs show up.
Japanese people hate being the center of controversy. For the most part, you're not going to have too many Japanese people that want to have these like embarrassing stories that will shame their family. Because people will be like, "Oh my God, you're crazy! You saw a UFO, you're crazy." So for this guy in the 60s and 70s,
you have dishonored your whole family.
You know what I mean? Like that's really not their vibe. They don't want to do that.
Yeah,
so for these guys to be like, "I saw this stuff,"
talks about UFOs going to the moon, coming from the moon, and like taking princesses and stuff like, and like their paintings have like UFOs in them and stuff. It's wild.
So there's a lot of weird stuff here. I just wanted to show it off because if you go ever to Fukushima, you have to go to the UFO museum, and it's like they straight up have a museum about all the UFOs that they've seen in Ino village under Fukushima. This guy made a video about it. I was trying to find here's the museum here. If you want to go, just remember this is the building you're looking for. If you ever go to Fukushima, you got to go see the UFO museum. All right. Okay. Good deal.
There's a UFO museum in Fukushima.
Right?
Yeah. And it's been there for way longer than the nuclear power plant. That's the thing. It's just like, what is this place? All right. Okay. Plus the pyramid. The fact that they're everywhere. These,
this
like,
is Japan's Area
disaster
51. It's got to be near there. You know, they
This
needed
is
the
it,
power.
yeah.
They needed the power, so they, for something.
It's crazy,
That's
man.
interesting. Good to know. But every country's got one. You know what UK's Area 51's called?
Is it Scotland or which one is it?
Porton Down.
Porton Down.
Down.
Okay. Yeah.
Porton Down. Yeah. So there's tons of cool stuff. Let's change gears then into I mean, I'm just excited about all this. I know there's a lot of red tape with the government and actually getting boots on the ground in there to explore and verify through excavation these things that we're seeing on new technology. The new technology is great with the ground penetrating radar and able to see stuff underground with these using different types of waves. And speaking of which, there's a lot of other technology for waves and other cool stuff going on. What was this interview? Did you guys? I haven't finished watching it yet. This just dropped a couple hours ago, about eight hours ago.
Start at 9 minutes and 20 seconds and just play like 5 minutes of it, Jeremy. There's some great
This one right here, right?
Yep.
9 minutes, you said?
Yes. 9 to just play from 9 minutes. Play a few of it and it gets good.
All right, let me I gotta share audio, so let me represent this. There it is.
They discuss specifically the patents, and then Sal discloses some information that has not been public before, as he states that he didn't sign an NDA on it. And I think you specifically, Mr. Rys, are going to appreciate it.
Awesome. Let's check it out.
A great man, a man that shall be remembered by history, for he deserves to be remembered by history. He is a man of great integrity. I was able to present. I went to the blackboard. I would, forget this dry erase board and stuff. To the blackboard, the piece of chalk in my mouth. Yeah, actually, I held it in my mouth for a little while. But anyway, in my hand, I actually went to the blackboard, put down Maxwell's equations, the 4 equations, 4 unknown. So again, heaviside version of Maxwell's equations. And from there, I was able to
pause that
derive
again for a sec, Jeremy.
what is understood as the Pais effect. Once he saw
a key fact that he just states is the 4 known Maxwell equations. Thus, there must and obviously are more equations of Maxwell that are also known, but only to after you just like sign an NDA probably or something like that.
I know from my college education, I did Griffiths and Jeffermenko, both. I got both of them for electromagnetism. So if people are familiar with those two textbooks on this is what they teach in the colleges. And they say that, the 4 Maxwell's equations, they teach you the differential and the integral form of them. There are 2 different forms. One uses the gradient operators and vector multiplication, like the cross and dot products, right? And the other one uses integrals over spaces, so like flux equations. But they all rely on something called the continuity equation in order for them to all make sense. And that's like there's no that says the continuity equation says that there's no extra charge or energies from anywhere else coming in or out of the equation. It's just the same the same amount of energy going through the surface on one. The amount of energy that went into a surface on one side is the same amount that's coming in out of that loop on the other side. And it's this J term, which is like a loop integral around the current, where all the current's going through in any of the Maxwell's equations.
But obviously, also a lot of people would just point at Maxwell and forget like Heaviside did a really important reinterpretation of Maxwell's formulas in like 1870s, and so I think that's also, it could be more that these are Heaviside equations as well.
Yeah, but you have to look at the whole where Maxwell got all this stuff from, because one of the equations of Maxwell's equations is Faraday's law, right?
Right.
One of them's Ampere's law. So all these guys, John Faraday and Ampere, the French guy, all these dudes were messing around with electricity in the 1700s and figured this shit out first. And they just kind of wrote down their interpretation of this all. And then Maxwell came along and said, well, if we just, kind of say everything's this vector fields, and we use this formalism, the formalism of vector fields, then we kind of get around this problem. And then that led to like tensor calculus, because it's like, oh, well, there's these things called tensors where each vector is there's a vector at every point in the equation, and it's a different value at every point, right? That's kind of like so that led to a lot of the calculus was essential for like building all this framework, like the understanding the differentials in space and the relation between space and time, because it's relativistic what's going on with the charges, and how moving a charge through space creates a magnetic field just by simply just transporting the charge. It's a relativistic effect. So there's definitely, like he said, it goes back to 1895. Yeah, so this is like understanding Maxwell's equations has gotten us a lot of engineering. We do a lot of our, all our engineers that currently work for all these companies are building stuff with that math.
So
right? It works.
I watched these two AIs discuss Maxwell's equations and free energy the other day, and it blew my mind when they brought up that part of Maxwell's missing equations was that he fully believed in what they called the ether then, and in a couple minutes here, Sal Pius calls it like quantum something, some new technical term, but says they're essentially the same. But the two AIs were saying that the key part of Maxwell's whole system was connecting electric fields and magnetism together through the ether, and that he was using the ether and had equations with the ether. Sorry, kind of choked on my words there, but it's very
right. Well, this is also like, it was, everyone kind of took the ether for granted, I feel like, until the 20th century, and then really particularly with the Michelson-Morley experiment, kind of just throwing ether out of the equations and pretending that we just have enough answers with relativity. But that's also led to quantum physics, nanophysics, all these ideas that are saying that physics isn't a unified theory. We cannot have a unified theory of physics without ether. I feel like that's kind of problematic.
And what they replaced with dark energy and dark matter. It's all
right, it's
like
the
same
thing.
Yeah, it's another term for it. All right, I'll shut up, and you want to play a little bit more, Jeremy?
Well, another thing I'll talk about that is worth mentioning is something called the retarded time. And the retarded time is...
I had a retarded time last night. No, I'm just kidding.
in the Heaviside Feynman formula, this is like, basically, if you have things moving at the speed of light, how do you plot the field from them, because they're moving so fast. So if you have charges that are moving really, really fast, then it gets really complicated trying to plot where they actually are, because by the time the signal of what that charge reaches the observer, it's changed position already, So, and that position change and the time it takes for that, it's like we're just seeing the light from the sun 8 minutes ago, so we're on 8-minute retarded time. That's basically how it goes. But anyways, yeah,
There we are.
ask you this, but you're just answering it. Keep going. Keep
The
going. Don't let me stop you.
the third arch in the triarchy of sentience. Remember, the first two arches really are based on, let's say, unlimited computing power coupled with vector databases. So we're talking about in such a way that the computer or the AI agent no longer has the ability, or rather restricted ability, to hallucinate. But the third arch culminates in what I think would be the transition from a regular AI agent to possibly an artificial general intelligence agent with adaptive prompt, targeted prompt engineering, quite possibly singularity level could be achieved. But anyway, I'm not going to drive it there. What I will drive it at is if the AI agent is able to generate an original concept, preferably in physics, then can be experimentally verified, validated against known data. That particular AI agent, in my opinion, has, if not developed, achieved a certain level of sentience. So I do believe AGI at that particular level is considerable. AGI status.
So you're not allowed
Again, an original physical concept.
Oh,
You're
I
not
think the
allowed
video
to use
jumped ahead of
AI
it, Jeremy.
because you think like China's going to steal the secrets because the AI is learning, or just more because of its can become sentient, or both?
You know, he was really getting into. I jumped ahead of time. That's what I did. Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Let's go back to this stuff is wild right here.
How many years we're on Earth in the air or in the water?
Even as a private citizen, because of EQ, I could not answer that. We're not
Okay. I
here
thought I had
to
a big enough
educate
question.
nor enlighten the enemy.
Okay.
Ashton, you and I have seen certain papers, have understood certain things. Just because we have not seen levitating craft in some unknown, unforeseen hangar, does not mean we do not understand the physics. Correct?
Oh, hey, absolutely. Look, I'm just an investigator and a journalist. You got to respect that I'm just playing the game here. I'm just doing what I got to do. Like, you are the respected Navy engineer. You should not say anything that would, harm your NDA. And my job is to come up with questions that push the boundary to the limit. So, a couple more. How many years behind the military do you think the public is technologically?
Yeah, this
right
was the good question.
People
right?
say,
Yeah.
oh, the military's
Right?
secrets advanced beyond the public. What is your opinion? If you had to give it like a number of decades, what would you say?
Put it this way. If any enemy out there has some crazy notion to invade, to attack, to come out of the blue sky and do something harmful to us, I would please ask them, for their own sake and that of their mothers, to please do not take such steps. It will be quick. It will be very dirty. And you'll never do it again.
Like,
Well,
what?
that's exactly pretty much what I expected.
Yeah. So
let me ask.
that's interesting because the skeptic in me is like saying, well, is there proof of this? Do we really have that? And or is this just a bluff on our part, like a psychological operation to tell, just to bluff the enemy into being like, you better not dare, But
Right?
but
The body language,
he
though.
also
The
talks
body
about
language.
he can't directly say anything about the technologies and stuff, but he kind of drops some hints, because what do they talk about? Like right after this, they get into, he talks about gamma rays and directed energy, right? And
Yes,
that, my friend, is where we get into real territory. Yeah. Look, yeah. I mean, yeah, could take it interpret it however you want, man. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people are gonna
yeah, those EM, right? The weapons, and then it's like it kind of goes along with Eric Hecker's like story, experience, and research, as well as Dutch Sense's in tracking these things on the radar and stuff. It's interesting, right?
Well, there's this thing, and I'll probably get banned for talk. This is probably one of the reasons, you know, my channel's so shadow banned, is because we know about classified stuff, and we're not afraid to just put it out there and talk about it openly on the stream, you know.
Right, but it doesn't exist. So yeah, right?
No, well, it doesn't officially, especially if you go and read the official articles on these things, you know. So here's the Wikipedia page on what you can look up for the official very bad science, as they call it. You know, of course, none of this is real, right? It couldn't be. It couldn't possibly be that, you know, in order to get the H-bomb reaction to work in the H-bombs, they needed to make a gamma ray mirror. And if you can make a gamma ray mirror, you can make a gamma ray laser, because how do you make a laser? You take your lasing material and you put mirrors on both ends, and you put a dot for the light to escape, and all the light trapped in between the two mirrors goes into phase from quantum mechanics, right? And so that's what they call lasing, or light amplification by the stimulated emission of radiation. So you're stimulating that cavity in order to emit radiation in a phased output, right? So the same idea in this hafnium controversy, right, is that, well, where did all the hafnium go, and what is it about this hafnium? Especially there's one isomer of hafnium which is like slightly almost like it actually like will jump up and down on the periodic table. Like it will jump up from hafnium to like the next element and then jump back down, which is really interesting, because very similar to what Bob Lazar talked about with element 115 jumping up to element 116 and back down again. You know, I always thought that idea was out there and crazy, but it turns out, yeah, there are these things called nuclear isomers, and hafnium was one of them that they were working on back in the, you know, 1997. Apparently this Jason advisory group took testimony about these triggered nuclear isomers, and the Jason Defense Advisory Group was disbanded. They started taking this whole group apart shortly, you know, after that. This used to be, the Jasons used to be like the top scientific advisors for DARPA and the military back in the day, you know. And they knew all. If you want, you know, to really read about the real classified stuff, look into the Jasons and the Jason group, because those scientists worked on the cream of the crop, you know, on this deep technology dive stuff. You know, I don't care about what Dark Journalist thinks about mystery schools and all that nonsense. I watched all his stuff, but he doesn't understand or know the physics and the physics community and the community that's really based around all this stuff. I do.
Sal might have mentioned that group or hinted towards that group as being the one that he had the interview with about his patents.
Oh yeah. This is knowing all this stuff behind the scenes. You can connect a lot more dots than Sal would like you to, and then the people that he works for would like you to be able to connect. Because yeah, this is the where these, because a lot of those people are still alive from the Jason group, right? They didn't just they disbanded the whole group, and they lost the federal grant and the funding and all that stuff, right? But those scientists, a lot of them are still alive. They didn't just go away, right? And they
just went private.
Well, there's a number of them that, like, you wouldn't know about these guys. You know about Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis, and those guys are pretty well out there, and especially now with the whole, they wrote all the DIRD Defense Intelligence Reference documents, the debriefings, you know, for the Air Force that came out in the ATIP disclosures, apparently, right? So all that stuff, it's like we said, that was a controlled leak. That was a controlled leak. That was a controlled, you know, they let a little bit of stuff out of the bag, but not too much. And I don't know if that's to send us and the Chinese and the Russians down a whole rabbit hole, thinking they have.
Right. So I suspect and heavily feel that the whole Tic Tac gimbal thing was the exact same, and like then what is that? And probably it is the same technology. If the MH370 thing was it, like if those videos are real and that orbs that technology, that's 10 years later down the road of these same sort of craft drone plasma things. I like it adds a layer of mystery to it for sure. You're muted, Jeremy.
Here again is the hafnium controversy article, and you can read about the Jason group and a lot of that stuff on that and dig into that a little deeper. But the whole issue with sorry, you had just mentioned this, and now I got thrown off looking at math equations and stuff. This was we were just talking about this, and I want to look this up. Not the Jason's group, not the hafnium controversy thing. Sorry, what were you? Do you remember what you just mentioned? I was just gonna go look this up, and now I can't. It slipped the tongue. I have to go rewind the stream. And
right. What did we just mention? So Sal talked, not that group.
I feel like I just got mind erased and neuralized, dude. Like
you're talking about Lazar and the Jason group, and
no, we're talking about Sal and this something about Sal's patents.
Patents and what the year that they had the conversations with this group. Potentially, it's like right at 10 minutes into the interview that
I know I wanted to mention Franklin R. Mead. There's a number of guys that worked on some of this stuff that are, directly connected. Franklin R. Mead worked with Lake Marabou on all the So Franklin R. Mead working with Lake Marabou back in the Reagan defense program on all the laser propulsion and laser technology stuff, because they were trying to figure out what to do with all these high-powered Navy lasers that they built, and these guys were running a lot of the experiments down there. And then T.D. Barnes, right, who I interviewed on my channel, who's the head program manager out at Area 51 during the years Bob Lazar claims to have worked there, said he never met Bob, never knew him, never worked out there. Said like the team of the guys that all worked out there were hand selected from a specific profile. They all like boats and they all like dogs. Okay. So they all, or something. I don't know if it was boats and dogs. So like they bought them a whole lake property. They bought out all the houses around the lake. All 52 houses were owned by the Area 51. So the whole neighborhood is literally
Los Alamos, basically.
It's basically, yeah. Well, it's everybody knew each other. So it's like Bob wasn't in that group. He said Bob didn't work out there on anything. Like this was a very select group that they picked, and we all liked boats, and we all lived together on a big lake where we all had boats on our lake. And that's the way they hooked us up, so that we had, you have all the friends and all the fun you ever want. Why are you going to talk to anybody else outside? And no one's allowed in that neighborhood. And the guy on the very end is all whacking hut houses, for security, with cameras.
Very small group, and we ain't in it.
Yeah, exactly. He said, I would know. This is how it operated. And he's the guy that actually worked out there on all the stuff. He's, talks about how after. I would love to interview him again in person, man. He's a wealth of knowledge and stuff. But his whole opinion on the Tic Tac, and I asked him this, is that the Tic Tac is these lasers technology that they're spoofing, so they can project anything. If they can project the ball of light, you just stretch that out, and what do you have? A pill, right?
Right. Well. Right, that's the thing, is that that could be like the first or second generation of it. And what is laser when it's condensed into what, a ball of plasma? And if they're combining a bunch of these lasers, are they able to now create the balls of plasma? And from that, once you have a bunch of the balls of plasma, are you able to actually warp space-time? Apparently,
Bingo.
Sal and Ashton believe so, and it was very, very telling. And I've brought this point up myself several times lately when talking about Sal, but for him to actually say it today in the interview of how the Navy also has the Air Force and is the top of the line of the technology development.
Yes, and they're the ones who built
Army.
all the lasers.
I think
They're
that's something.
U.S. Naval Research
Yes,
Labs were the
Delaney,
ones that
exactly.
In the Navy,
started
is
the Q division.
ONI. This is the ONI Gauss.
Q division
research.
is still classified from the 1960s. That's how.
But
That's
you go back even to the 40s and 50s. Like in the 50s, you have degaussing of the boats for sonar, right? And I feel like this is where we get into the electromagnetic, like the level of what we were defining at the time. I mean, the Germans in World War II were defining gravity as the level of Gauss, right? That was something that they were, it was like the measurement, the magnetic strength in Gauss, right? And so this is what they were using to degauss boats, which is what the Philadelphia experiment is supposed to be all about. What they were saying, that they were just degaussing boats for magnetizing them so they didn't pick up by sonar, but really they're phase shifting by using electromagnetic spin pulse. And this is all just by having equal and opposite Gauss rating. So they have to constantly regauss the boats, which means having each part of the boat be ionically charged.
That's what I picked up from the Philadelphia experiment, right? Like there was supposed to be two giant generators of opposite rotating magnetic fields.
With neodymium and some ceramic virgin magnets, right? And then aluminum, nickel, cobalt connected to two electromagnetic generators, right?
Well,
and so these were like 2,500 kilowatt diesel bus generators that they had running. So yeah, I think, and then it's supposed to get up to like 5,000 Gauss. So if they can continually pulse the 5,000 Gauss, then they can remove the spin state, or they can rearrange the spin state, and this would allow for the object to be in multiple phase
that's
shift.
the next level. Yes, that's. But people don't understand where we're at and where the aircraft that we have, the top secret aircraft where we're currently building have the last generation of that, which is just blasting the air so that it supercavitates, so that you can fly through it at hypersonic. This is how you get past like
laser burn a vacuum. You vacuum right in front of the craft, so you're going into the vacuum, so there's no drag on the air.
Yes,
you're just burning the air off.
And that was reported on. Brett Tingley did this awesome article on the War Zone back in 2020, and this was completely overshadowed by a whole bunch of other nonsense.
Go back up for a second there. Show that those there, right there. Look at this right here. And so I think this black spot in the front of the craft, that's kind of what we're talking about, is where the nose diameter is. There's some sort of a laser weapon, but it's really being used just to burn off the oxygen to make a vacuum. That's what we're
create plasma.
Well, you see, the interesting thing is that with the torpedoes is that they have like a little nozzle in the front of the torpedo on the supercavitating torpedoes, and it like blasts some of the backdraft forward like a little bit, and that apparently is enough to do it. And on the supercavitating torpedoes for water, you know. And I just wonder what the hell that would do to like a school of fish or a dolphins, or
why there's pods of whales washing up dead and entire freaking
they're testing these things long range, and it just like oh my god. And even being near that, it's like dynamite fishing, just knock you out from the concussion of the super.
Right, so this is a huge point here, the Byfield Brown effect on the B2, and that it was Dave, I believe, and Ashton that discussed this, and Dave brought up the point that it was, oh my God, what the Northrop Grumman, right, the ones that make B2, had bought a bunch of Brown's work and patents, his private patents, right before, like in the 80s or something, right before making the B2, which, well, that's just kind of confirms it, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. They were they built two versions of the B-2. There was the B-2 Spirit bomber, and then there was the B-2 Advanced Technology bomber. So a couple of them got the special, were equipped with the special equipment. Apparently, they don't all have it. Some of them are just a little bit slow and rugged to take off. But again, all those flying wing type craft came from the Horton brothers and the Nazis. That was Operation Paperclip took a lot of that.
Yeah, the
info over.
Horton
Right.
229,
Well,
I think.
it's the B2 and then it's the TR3B. So is that the third generation one that goes into or out
Well,
of?
now you're talking B2 is Northrop Grumman. TR stands for Teledyne Ryan, right? So Teledyne
Okay.
Ryan was in San Diego, and the TR3A we know was a real craft, right? That was the
But
one
the
we
Horton
do-
Ho, right? Pull up my screen for a second. Go to the Horton Ho 229. Horton Here's a Ho. Totally different Dr. Seuss book. Horton and then Ho. There we go. Right there.
Yes,
That was
this
it.
thing with the double jet engines in the front.
Yeah.
Jet.
So this is from the Wagon Fabric, and they made at least 3 of them. This is definitely where the B2 design comes from. I think there's pretty much no question when you look at the design of the craft. It's just literally
they realized that this was a new adaptation with the internal intake jet engine.
Right.
This was very novel in the 1940s, and that's what they used to break the sound barrier with Chuck Yeager in 47 as well.
Right.
But they
the
realized
Horton brothers were doing a flying wing in the 30s, and the more you go back, the more it's like occultists in Austria that were like part of the Vril, Hyperborean, like doing seances because they didn't have radio yet, and they're they were really interested in building a flying wing since like probably the 20s and 30s, right? And so the culmination that actually was used was the Horton Ho, but
look at the friggin' wheel on the front of that landing gear.
Totally.
They must have.
Yeah,
there's a reason that was engineered that large, right?
Oh yeah,
gotta be. Look at
where Horton ended up after the war, right? Argentina.
Really?
Oh, another Argentina. That brings up another point we need to discuss in the year of 2025 disclosure, and that Argentina just released its Nazi files supposedly after talking with Trump about it and claiming the evidence that Adolf Hitler flew to Spain, then took a U-boat to Argentina and lived there till his 70s, where he had 2 daughters that apparently also had children, so that there's actually literal descendants of Adolf running around in Argentina to this day.
Oh, my Uncle Adolf lives in the
Right,
mountains in Argentina. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of German towns down in Argentina.
Yeah. Well, El Bosón is where Horton ended up. Let me show you a couple things really quickly. Go back to my page for 1 second, just for 30 seconds. I gotta the Horton H1. So here's the H1 from 33. Okay, so 1933, and it looks like a paper airplane, but you can see
like a glider, right?
It's freaking great. It's the 1-wing glider. It can run without an engine. It is a glider, but it also has an engine, which is what's cool about it. Then, if you go on further, the H1B. So the H1B continued on. This is what led to the 229 eventually. But then you look at some of the variants, and then you've got like this is the Argentina 34. Okay, so this was designed in Argentina in El Bosón above Bariloche, which is where they have the Atomic Research Center and the they have like a hydroelectric water plant, and they have their first fusion reactor, right? So it
looks like another one's mating with it. Jesus.
This is from 1930, 1960, 1957 is the 37. Now look at the front of it. Remember what you were talking about a minute ago?
Yeah.
Bingo. There's the nose cone.
Right on the front of one of these 1-wing planes. And they continued on. Here's the 38.
So
these are all Argentina. 41.
That metal
spike. You can see the Argentina flag on the side of it.
These are all in Argentina. Wow.
Yeah, they made some cool stuff. And so people were always saying, hey, the Nike Pole 9 with the Rotax engine. There's all kinds of places around the world where UFO sightings are huge. And Argentina, El
Argentina is one
Bosón,
of them.
one of the biggest ones. And it's interesting because like they have plenty of reason for that.
Yeah, and like apparently like the areas where the Germans were well known for out in the mountains is where a lot of the UFO sightings are seen, specifically
do
one
they
town where there's like a factory or something.
They have to
and
have
also with energy.
machining. In fact, yeah, how do they get the machining out there to do all this? They must have.
So you bring
crazy.
submarines, you bring stuff to the coast, you bring it through the lakes, and at the lakes, that's the thing. A lot of these sightings are crafts flying out of the lake, out of Lake Pucón and out of Lake Bariloche, right? There's even weird like islands that move around in some of these lakes. What's the Rio Tranquilo? I think is another one.
Jeremy.
You should have your screen up because you know how to spell these places, and you can give us a tour.
And I just gotta say, shout out Angela Merkel as #1 suspect of Hitler's like daughter or granddaughter, because like I completely forgot like when there was the Q rumors. One of the Q rumors was like Angela Merkel is Hitler's daughter or something like that. And it's like, what could it be? Is our reality that much of kabuki theater? And like what anyways, I'm sure.
Merkel has a property in Paraguay right next to San Bernardino, Paraguay. I'll pull that up as well. Is a place where the Nazis were, and there's no extradition in Paraguay. It's also George Bush and Nestle are their only neighbors. You know what I mean? That have like huge oil reserves. But then there's the Iguazu power plant, the hydroelectric. Itapu Dam. I'll pull all this up in a second. And then El Bosón, Argentina, UFOs. Let me see that really quickly. UFO sightings in Argentina. Boom, right here. So let's just here. Let me just show you. Okay. So first off, this is let me show you the El Bosón. This is where UFOs seem to come out of. Notice the pyramid-like kind of mountain. It's kind of a little chiller than your average, but you see some interesting points right there. Lines, right. Let me go back to how far do I have to go here? Pucón. Here's Pucón. Pucón. This is the symbol for Pucón, which it's literally a water underneath a volcano. It's what they're trying to. I'm seeing a lot. I've seen a Mario Brothers mushroom from like.
No, it's a triangle craft with waves coming out the back.
Do you see the craft?
Right? Right? No doubt, triangle craft with waves out the back.
It's a wing. Okay, and then so if you want to go through, here's a bunch of sightings in Argentina and Portugal and etc. here. But I was going to go to the Argentina 1995 incident in Bariloche, where dudes were like just trying to, have like a ski resort, and all of a sudden they started seeing crazy, like this is the kind of lights that they saw as they're flying over Argentina, over Bariloche's lake, over by Island Aryan, the Aryan Island, and also the Slavonic Mountains, the Montagna Slavonia. But there's just so many things that you start to see these. Remember what you were talking about earlier, these kinds of line-shaped crafts, right? A lot of the things that like Nuremberg event crafts that they see in Argentina. And then, Puerto Rio Tranquilo. So this is a place where it's a very interesting place. It's like the deepest lake in South America. It's it's not the biggest because Lake Titicaca, but also UFOs in Lake Titicaca you got to look into too, because Lake Titicaca, which is a great name for a lake, by the way, but they have these weird it's supposed to be
Titicaca.
It's supposed to be like the throat chakra or something like that, or is that Shasta? It's the sacral chakra of the earth, like, or one of those, like the hippies had these things about it. And it's cool. I walked around it once. It took like 7 days to walk around this lake. It's freaking huge. This is here. Let me go in there for you. You can see that big old lake right there. So it's no slouch of a lake. It's pretty big. And in this area you have the Island of the Sun. That's the way. There's the Island of the Sun is an island in the center of Lake Titicaca. So I went and I stayed on the island of Titicaca's Island of the Sun right there. And there's all these like human sacrifice pads. This is where they have those giant rocks. Isla del Sol, Titicaca, megalithic. Let's just see if that pulls up anything real quick. Ancient ruins under the sacred lake.
Supposedly a pyramid even under the lake.
Yeah, well, it's also got like portals, or at very least tunnels that connect different places. For like some people say, you can get from Rio Tranquilo to Titicaca, which is like thousands of miles away. But they've suggested people have these stories that go back like 1,000 years of people that swim, get stuck in a tunnel, and then all of a sudden they like swim out of the tunnel and they're in a place with, like a portal, like 1,000 miles away in the other lake, right? And a lot of Swiss people been buying land here and in Rio Tranquilo. It's just Rio Tranquilo is really beautiful because glacial and super clean. Titicaca is getting cleaner, and you see a lot of like quinoa growing in the hills, but it's still, it looks like a feudal village. There's like peasants that live there all the time, but there's tons of UFO sightings there as well. So, I mean, you could also do the Atacama Desert. The Atacama Desert's kind of like the Roswell, and there's no ozone above Chile, which is weird for a lot of reasons, but it helps with their giant observatories. So they're able to see with a lot less interference, which is really interesting. But how do you end up without an ozone? It's like some nuclear war happened there thousands of years ago or something. It's crazy. I mean, for a people obsessed with a flying Frisbee disc that looks like a spider.
Right? And why have so many, like the UFOs used to always be discs and cigar shape, and now it's like it's always orbs or triangles and supposedly jellies. I don't know about that one, but
UFOs over Iguazu Falls. Similar events occurred in 1911, then in 1950s, 1890s. Oh well, I'm just reading about it really quick. I don't think I have any good pictures to share with you, really, but just I can at least show you the Itaipu Dam. Okay, so Itaipu Dam is a hydroelectric power plant that 40 to 60% of South America gets all of its power. The entire continent gets all of its power from this one hydroelectric dam. It is fierce. It is a huge dam, and they literally took a chunk of Paraguay away just so that it could belong to Argentina, because Argentina did most of the work to build that. But guess why? Who was in charge of Argentina at the time? Freemasons with Perón and their connection to the Nazis, which is interesting because the Nazis have been connected with the Vatican, and the Vatican betrayed them to work with the CIA. Pope Pius XIII. So they built this giant dam in South America with the help of Mercedes-Benz. This is how they found Eichmann, right? And this is the whole thing where they brought him to Israel for his show trial. But this whole area is the golden triangle of South America, because you have Paraguay, Brazil, Argentina, and even I think Uruguay. I don't know if Uruguay is quite on the same river path, but there's a point there where all of these places intersect, where all the borders are, and there's a river between them all. So the river's like out of bounds.
There seems to be a thread with people always say, oh well, there's no UFOs anywhere else in the world that we see except for like in the Americas. I mean, there's a couple cases in Brazil and Argentina, around Argentina actually.
Well, then the celestial phenomenon over Nuremberg. So there's just something about places the Germans have been too. Because look at these pictures of the 1560s, and they have, what do they have? They have these balls, and then they have balls that are stretched out into these cigars, and then the cigars are actually shooting balls out of the cigars. It's even more accurate or vivid or detailed than most of the things we're getting from Roswell or from UFO disclosure today, because this is tying all of it together, right? It's crazy.
Sure, right? It's like it goes back so far back.
Well, I've always told people, like, if you're relying on the government in these hearings to bring you the truth or to tell you the truth, then
how's that been working out for you?
Yeah, it's not going to work out. That's not going to work out. Those people are freaking clueless. As we saw recently in the JFK hearings, the lady didn't even know Oliver Stone wasn't, Roger Stone. So,
yeah, you need new solutions. You can't use the old tactics to solve the problems that were the same tactics that made the problem.
The Pentagon, what was it? An information agent special or what? Like department? Like it's so insane that people have faith in government agents, and information operation agents.
Yeah, it's so revealing that, you know, time after time, it just comes out that all these people who are tasked with investigating the government turn out to be, you know, involved with the cover-ups and stuff. As we've done a lot of the Kennedy assassination, and I've been deep diving this and just absorbing everything I can on it. Also, maybe before we get into that, whatever happened to that Russian spy that was arrested in Florida with the radar kind of, he had a dish kind of gun that was in a backpack type of weapon. He was basically blasting people, Havana syndrome. And they had this car chase. They were going to pull him over, and this guy like ran, and they didn't know why he ran, but he had this backpack with all this stuff in it.
Oh, I can't believe this
Never
ended up
seen
on the
this.
news. This is crazy.
You never seen this or heard about this?
No,
No,
of
there's
course
bad
not.
stories,
That's
and
wild.
he's trying to. We never really get a look at the device, you know, because I've been trying to like FOIA the arrest records or anything. If it's all classified, they won't let you look at this. But this was the guy that was arrested, and he had this. They had this backpack with all, you know, obviously some classified stuff that he wasn't. He was, you know, and they suspect him of targeting Americans. They had the whole 60 Minutes thing on this. You guys check it out.
Yeah. Also, so a lot of people say that Hitler had to leave Argentina because too many Italian communists and the Catholic Church, so he ended up in Paraguay. So then there is all these stories about Paraguayan UFOs over San Bernardino, and so there's a lot of pictures of UFOs from San Bernardino. They call them ovnis, OVNIS, right? Here's like another example right over Asuncion. You can see, you know, some of the pictures there. Not incredible, because this is the thing. Like, it's really bass backwards in some parts of Paraguay. I mean, it's one of my favorite places in the world, but it's not a place that has like a lot of technology or people that are paying attention to stuff like that. So if they catch like one photo, you're lucky. And for the most part, it's like the CIA and the Peace Corps and the Freemasons are keeping that place going. But yeah, if you look into ovnis in 2009, 2021, there's just all of these pictures of cigar-shaped crafts and of fast-moving lights. And there's a whole thing with the U.S. Space Force investigating in Paraguay and San Bernardino in 2021. You know, there's a lot of different things about that, which I think are interesting, just because Paraguay is where everyone goes to make a deal. If the North Korean dictator wants to drink scotch from any country that's embargoed North Korea from buying scotch, he has to buy it through Paraguay. Paraguay is the wash for, you know, if you want to buy Cuban cigars, or if you want to, you know, any country that's not allowed to do a deal directly through each other, they use Paraguay. And Paraguay is a great moneymaker for the Bush family and people like it. For that reason. So it's the craziest people. There's no extradition out of Paraguay. Another reason why Merkel has her property there. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to blow it up too big because I love that place. But yeah, it's like, yeah, it's
Sounds
kind of
like we need a trip to Paraguay and a private property.
Yeah, that's the thing. Most of it is private property. That's what's crazy, you know, like. Oh, I remember one time I'm in the middle of Paraguay, in the middle of like the mud and nowhere on a bus, and I drive by a giant warehouse the size of an airport that has hundreds of Hummers and Rolls Royces and fancy cars just coming out of the thing, and they're being brought in and out. And it's like, what is this? Like, there's no roads here. Who wants these fancy? Like, what's even happening? But they're probably they bring them through there and they sell them to, like, you know, North Korea, again, like places where they're not allowed to buy them. That's usually what it's for.
Wow.
It's a great place. It really is. They had a war called the Triple Alliance War, where 99% of the population of Paraguay was annihilated, genocide, completely wiped out. And at that time, Paraguay had 99% literacy rating. Women and men could vote. It was the Jesuit Republic, right? And so everyone in Paraguay were pretty much intelligent, educated university students, people with interest in astronomy. So if you look into it, it's pretty crazy what happened to Paraguay. And it was just essentially erased, replaced with Alfredo Stroessner's dictatorship. the CIA controlled up until they just cooed him out because they realized he had like 2 sons that were going to take over. One was gay and the other was super into cocaine. I mean, they might have both been both, but you know, like that was the way they thought of them at the time. And then no one really liked that. So the CIA just pushed him out and created their little, the new guy, the new president of Paraguay bought his sister the new guy owned a soda company that took over Coca-Cola's bottling plant called Pulp. So Pulp, it's like a Coca-Cola like syrup company, runs the country. And then he bought the newspaper for his sister. You know, it's genius. It's freaking genius. It's a great place.
I mean, we look at the stuff that the CIA's done. It's just remarkably genius. I was looking into Michael Schellenberger, you know, recently because you know something about that guy just never doesn't pass
like
the
it
sniff test. You know what I mean?
No.
He looks like a character from Planet of the Apes. I know Roseanne got in trouble for saying that, but I think it's still true.
No, but this guy literally, if you don't know who he is, he works as this media guy who's anti-censorship apparently, and which is a joke.
I met him a couple of times at Timcast. He is from California in like he's like from San Francisco, right? Yeah.
You've met him at Timcast, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, he like ran this whole hearing, the last UFO hearing with Jeremy Corbell. It was like him and Jeremy Corbell. And then Jeremy Corbell's even accusing him of being an agent.
Oh my! What?
Which is like if Corbell accuses you of being an agent, then you gotta have problems.
Yikes.
But yeah. So Michael Schellenberger, apparently
he went to UCSC. He went to University of California, Santa Cruz.
His father was CIA. You know that?
Surprise!
Surprise!
Amazing.
Daddy
Crazy.
CIA. You know, there's a lot of these career CIA people that have children who they change the last name, and then they end up in media. But this guy has.
And I'm not saying I hate him or anything like that. By the way,
Say yes to an interview and secretly invite Jeremy.
Yes, get him on, man. I would love to, know more about this guy, but it doesn't tell any, about his personal life. It doesn't tell, it doesn't say anything about his father on here on the Wikipedia article, which is, very suspicious. But you look into it and who his dad is. He's CIA.
He's like one of the few conservatives in California. So
he's fake. He's fake. He's manufactured. You understand that these people come out of the woodwork fully formed on the media scene. Like,
I have to talk about gender dysphoria and aliens.
Yes.
Look at those eyes. It's like this blank, dark stares. They're even pupils. They're even a soul. He's just been completely programmed by the look.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. Come on, man. I can't.
Oh, man. Yeah, exactly.
Twitter file journalist, interesting. So
Interesting. Yeah. Well, again, when we find out, this is like the day of revelations because the used to be like these people, these operatives were able to work for like decades before people like caught on. We just recently realized that Priscilla McMillan, all right, who wound up in Russia to interview Lee Harvey Oswald when he went to Russia, and then winds up in Dallas befriending Marina Oswald and becoming best friends with Marina and writing her autobiography, becoming this intermediary. But it turns out that she was though she denied it multiple times when asked in interviews, we got the documents now in the JFK files release that show that she was a CIA paid a witting collaborator for the CIA. Witting means you know that you're working for the CIA and you're publishing propaganda. And this is like official literature, which was set the biography. People want to know about Lee Harvey Oswald, and this like was basically the CIA creating a legend for Lee Harvey Oswald for the public to eat up and believe. And they silenced everybody.
There is a video, I'm trying to find it, but Michael Schellenberger made a video and it was like, the child sacrificing castration cult scares me more than the CIA. That was literally one of his videos. I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Dude, the CIA scare me. One of the things I've been digging into is the signal men. Right, there was this umbrella man, and he's standing right next to. He was this dark complected man who's right there by the presidential limousine. He was waving up until a second before. This is right before the shot that hit JFK in the throat is fired. This is right about when it's fired, because this is Abraham Zapruder, right, and this is the Stemmons Freeway sign. So we know from the Zapruder film that as soon as they emerge from behind the Stemmons Freeway sign, we can see the edge of the umbrella man's umbrella, and this man. And these two characters are extremely suspicious, as are the three yellow markings where the shots. There are three yellow markings on the curb painted the night before the assassination. Beverly Oliver was standing right on top
The
of
kill
one
zone.
and
They
got
literally painted
the
the kill zone on
They
them.
literally painted it for the timing of the shots. They painted for there to be a kill zone, and this guy sits down immediately after the motorcade goes by and the shots were fired. This guy just sits down and he's fiddling with something. He's not just sitting down; he's sitting down and fiddling with both arms behind his back in this photo. I don't know if you can see that, but he's got both of his arms behind his back, fiddling with something behind his back, tucked into his back. The other pictures we have of this guy that I've put together, he sits down right next to the umbrella man who folds up in his umbrella and they sit down calmly and just look at the situation. This guy's looking over towards the grassy knoll. This guy's looking at all the cops and everyone coming up on Houston and Elm Street, following the motorcade, right? I've been doing a deep dive into who these guys are, these tramps and whatnot, because the Wikipedia article says that Tramp A is Dan Carswell, but Dan Carswell was actually, if you look up the whole history of Dan Carswell in the CIA, that was a cover name that David Lamar Christ used when he got arrested in Cuba and spent 3 years in a Cuban prison. And those documents came out in the JFK files too. So anyone in the mainstream media tells you nothing's in there and it's all boring stuff, just don't understand jack about any of it. But you can see that the pictures in those documents of David Lamar Christ, and it's clearly not this Tramp A fellow. And plus, this guy just got arrested in Cuba. His wife and kids were like freaking out the entire time he was gone, and he just got reunited with them in, I think, like September of 1963. He was in prison from like 1960 to 1963 in Cuba. And so I doubt that he would be just going to the assassination of President Kennedy, because Kennedy had nothing to do with his arrest or the Cuban, and he just got reunited with his family, according to all these documents. So there's no way that this guy is going to go and be involved in the Kennedy assassination, 2 months after being reunited with his family after just serving 3 years in a Cuban prison for, committing crimes for the CIA. It just doesn't match up, doesn't jive. And it's not him. It's clearly not him. Look at the little slits for eyes. It's not this guy. And plus, David Christ was 6'1", and this guy's clearly the short tramp. He's probably like 5'8", 5'9". So again, Tramp A, and this man is apparently Chauncey Holt, who this stunning confession came out 4 months ago. It's got 3 million views already on Documentary Central. Just started watching it. And Judith Van Baker, right? Very Baker. She, first off, she got to read her book, because Danny didn't read her book, man. And he should have really done that interview a lot differently. It didn't jive right. But yeah, Judith Very Baker was working with David Ferry, apparently in New Orleans, working on cancer formulas, fast-acting cancer, injections for the CIA. And a lot of the people in the JFK assassination would die of these cancers and stuff, which was really, really interesting. So there's definitely something there. And she talks about all that and her connections with Oswald. So Oswald's definitely a very interesting character. There's a lot more to Oswald than we know about. And Judith Very Baker's story is just, the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Oswald. There's so much more on Lee. So Lee, Judith Berry Baker, of course, was Oswald's girlfriend when he was in New Orleans. And while, you know, Oswald is in New Orleans, he's working with Ferry and in Guy Bannister's office. Guy Bannister is the FBI agent who created the X-Files. So all this JFK stuff is deeply connected to the UFO file stuff through these key individuals who come up in the assassination, just in the research. And you know, what's really disturbing is that the people that they have in these hearings going before, you know, Jeff Morley and Jim Eugenio and also even Mark Robert, these guys are excellent researchers. They dove into the JFK stuff, do great research and stuff, but they're afraid to connect it with the UFO file stuff because of stigma. And they don't want
everything's connected. It's so crazy. Every single thing is, it's like the CIA and cocaine. I don't know. Everything was connected. You got dolphins. I mean, like Sasquatch is connected to JFK.
And that's where they miss out, because they really.
I think Sasquatch is the one thing not connected to JFK.
No. I've seen things about Sasquatch being connected to, like, in the 70,000 page documents. Bigfoot is in the documents. That's where we're at with this.
Okay, I want to see those files.
Basically, most of it's not even about JFK. That's where we're at.
Okay, exactly.
If you look at the what's popular and trending on Twitter and stuff these days, is there's a real huge rise in popularity of the theories that, you know, that the Jewish state of Israel was behind the assassination of Kennedy. You know, I even went to my local store. I joke around with people at the stores about, you know, hey, you know that why the CIA killed Kennedy? It's because
they didn't help with Ruben. No, but Ruben Juan Batista in Cuba, right? There's ties to Israel and the mafia through that. So the creation of the state of Israel is also tied to Cuba and the Bay of Pigs. So yeah, it's everywhere you go.
It's also World War II, because, you know, Hitler was exterminating the Jews and kicked them all out of, you know, Europe and everything.
Totally.
A lot of them fled, so they didn't have a home. And so, like, the part of the creation of the state of Israel was to, like, give these displaced Jews a home after World War II, and so that's all connected. The Nazi, but the crazy thing is the Nazis and the fascists were behind all this stuff. There's so much connections in the JFK assassination to these fascist, groups and organizations and people, right? But yet the popular, they're successfully blaming the state of Israel, because Anslinger was connected to this one spy at Reuben Ephron and had multiple other, you know, Anslinger had a bunch of connections to Israel, you know, and they're trying to say Anslinger ran this CIA within the CIA and that it was Israel that was behind this assassination. But really, there's just as many connections to the UFO stuff as there is, you know, to any of that stuff. But it's just crazy, because then you're having all this hate speech, you know, taking over the narrative on Twitter recently. And it's really, I think it's just another layer of the onion that they add to sort of,
discredit
so that
it.
nobody takes a bite. You know, you don't take a bite of the apple because it's layered in onion layers, right? Anyways, the whole thing with those signal men, though, I want to get into that, because the three tramps, this guy looks like he's one of these signal men on the knoll, right? There's this guy. This is the tramp. You know, it looks like the same get up, you know, it looks like the same shirt, same kind of hairstyle, same everything. And this guy has been pinned as Frank Sturgis, you know, the Watergate burglar, and by a number of assassination researchers. But he's next to this dark complected man who immediately after the assassination, he's looking towards them. They both sit down. They were both standing up, and then as soon as the president's dead, they sit down. That's the signal to get back off and get out of there. And this guy's radioing to somebody, because remember when he sat down before in that other picture, you saw him fiddling with something behind his back. Immediately after the assassination, he's fiddling with something behind his back. And then he pulls out this device. It looks like a walkie-talkie. And he's looking towards the knoll on the walkie-talkie, which is, you know, always been super curious about who this umbrella man and this guy walking right up to Kennedy's car, waving at him as he goes by. And then, so a number of researchers have think that this man, the dark complected Cuban man, was a guy named Felipe Vidal Santiago. And as you can see at that nose, it really does look like it could be him. And this other complected man, I don't know Roy Hargraves' height, but it does look like it could be a match for Roy Hargraves, although much more sunken cheeks, as you see in the this whole where's the other graphic that I had of this guy? He has much more sunken cheeks. You see, if that's Roy Hargraves. But these guys were arrested in a train car back in the train yard behind the grassy knoll after the assassination.
What?
There were about 11 people that were arrested by the Dallas cops in Dealey Plaza. 11 people. And a number of them have been identified as, this guy, I think that Tramp A is Jerry Hemming. Jerry Hemming set up this whole organization called Interpen, which was the International Penetration Force. And they trained under this guy named Carl Jenkins out in the Everglades and down in Florida for these assassinations. And so these guys show up in Dallas, paint the curbs, and have signal men out there, on the deal right in front of the Stemmons Freeway sign with a walkie-talkie. And then like a whole bunch of these dudes were arrested in Dealey Plaza. There's 5 of them that were actually photographed that we've identified, right? So these are the 5 that we've identified as being operatives that were in Dealey Plazas. The 3 tramps that were arrested in the train yard behind, and then these 2 signal men that were out in front. And that's like the key evidence we have in all the tapes of this. I'm sure there's other tapes, because there's other videos and other stuff that were apparently exist in the evidence record that are still classified. If that evidence can come out, then that would really help us piece together, like, were there other agents from Interpen or Operation 40 or Alpha 66 there all those groups are very much related and connected to this Operation Mongoose, which was like this assassination squad that was set up to kill Castro. And when they couldn't get through to Castro and the Kennedy was in the way,
Couldn't kill a foreign president, so they killed their own.
right? And they had a patsy ready to go that was being, basically handled by these a number of CIA people that we've connected them to, with this patsy Lee Harvey Oswald is again connected to. Gets a job at D. Harold Bird's warehouse. D. Harold Bird is the guy who the Charles Cabell, the mayor of Dallas, his brother set up the Bay of Pigs operation, was fired by Kennedy. So all these people in Dallas hated Kennedy, and it's the perfect city to have this operation go down and set it all up. But apparently, what I'm learning is that when they arrested these guys in Dealey Plaza, they had to get their men out. And so they had to create a diversion and get all the cops over there and arrest Oswald right away, because they were afraid that Oswald was going to flee and get away.
The National Reconnaissance Office, right? Like the NRO, they have like a Sasquatch military patch. They do all the satellite launch. There are a lot of satellite launches, and all the Immaculate Constellation Recovery Program. Most of that's through the NRO. But here, just really quickly, pull up my screen for a second. Check out this patch that they have with Bigfoot on it.
NRO.
Dove in a rocket. Wow,
that's great.
I mean, dude, all right, and Bigfoot, yeah. All right.
Wow. Yeah. Well, again, Bigfoot doesn't factor into this, but I will talk about one conspiracy theory. I mean, that's all facts. This is all fact stuff. Is identifying these strange people that were arrested and seen in Dealey Plaza. But what happens is J.D. Tippit gets shot, and all the cops go absolutely bonkers in the city of Dallas. When a cop gets shot it's just, look at any time a cop gets shot, like when when those two Boston bombers shot the cop and
it's
here in
open
Boston.
hunting season for the cops.
They shot up the entire neighborhood. I went there and filmed the scenes, like in Watertown, Mass. After they caught those bombing suspects, the cops shot up houses, windows were broken, there was bullet holes in the siding. I documented it all. Like, they went nuts. And so that's exactly what happened when Officer Tippit gets shot. Now, Officer Tippit, there's no hard evidence that says that he was directly involved in the assassination. There's theories that, Oswald couldn't have gotten to the theater in the amount of time, and that Tippit was out of the area over here. And that there's a theory that Oswald actually got a ride from Tippit, that Tippit was involved in giving Oswald a ride to the theater and dropped him off there. Because that would explain why nobody saw him walking from here to there. Although they're saying also that he took all these back neighborhoods to avoid people seeing him. But it's a weird spot by this baseball field over where Tippit was shot. But apparently that created the distraction because for them to get the men out of the Dallas police office, because there was no record for that for years. And then one showed up with these names of these three vagrants who to fit the official story on who those three tramps were. But those guys were released sometime after Tippit was shot, when everyone rushed to get to the theater and try to find the cop killer, Oswald. Right. So perfect diversion. And again, Carl Jenkins is still alive. If we could get him to testify to Congress, that would be, he might have he might be one of the few people left in the Kennedy assassination with some information to share, because I don't think we're going to get the truth out of Ruth Paine ever. Ruth Paine is literally the whole reason that Oswald got the opportunity in the building. If you believe the official story, none of that would have happened without Ruth Paine, this do-gooder Quaker woman